Or stood on the bridge of the warship Harmony's Edge and watched the stars drift past the main viewing screen. The ship moved through space like a living thing, its biometal hull shifting and healing small scratches from cosmic dust. The bridge was quiet except for the soft humming of the ship mind and the gentle whispers of his crew speaking through their neural links. It was how Babe Patrol should be, peaceful, calm, civilized. Manning deep space patrols for 20 standard years. In all that time, he had never fired a weapon in anger. The galaxy was at peace under the species alliance. The three great civilizations, the Crystalline Collective and the Void Swimmers, had learned long ago that war was wasteful and stupid. Better talk, trade, find solutions that helped everyone. Sickening man, Subcommander approached with the smooth gliding walk of all. Her silver skin cut the bridge lights as she moved. Like all the crew, she was linked to the ship's impact network. Could feel her calm thought mixing with his own. And her she said through both voice and neural link, "We are approaching the outer edge of our patrol zone. All systems show normal readings. No ships detected in the area." This sector had been empty for decades. It sat on the border between Alliance space and the unknown regions beyond. Sometimes old survey teams had found dead worlds out here, planets that had been strip mined or abandoned long ago, but no living civilizations. The Alliance had decided this region was not worth colonizing. "As to the edge marker, then we'll sweep back toward home," ordered. "I want a full sensor sweep of the boundary zone before we leave." His Edge was one of the Alliance's patrol ships. It stretched 800 meters from nose to tail, shaped like a long teardrop. The hull was made of living metal that could repair itself from minor damage. The weapons were smart missiles that could decide their own targets and choose not to fire if civilians were nearby. The crew of 60 lived in harmony with the ship's AI, working together like parts of one mind. It was what 300 years of peace had built. Ships that thought before they killed. Crews that felt each other's emotions and could never fire on friends by mistake. Weapons that chose mercy when possible. Proud to serve on such a ship, the Alliance had learned from the dark times when species fought each other with crude weapons and simple hatred. Those days were gone forever. Now, even when conflicts happened, they followed strict rules. Evacuate civilians first. Offer surrender terms. Use only the force needed to win. Take prisoners and treat them well. Never destroy what could be captured intact. Manor called Ignition from his central station. "I'm getting some strange readings from the deep scan array." A tiny speck of curiosity through the neural link. Strange readings were rare but not dangerous. Usually they meant old wreckage or unusual stealth phenomena. "What kind of readings?" asked. He frowned at his displays. The young Ignition had joined the crew only 6 months ago, fresh from the academy. His thoughts through the neural link felt confused and slightly worried. "Computer can't identify the energy signatures, sir. They're very faint, coming from about 12 light hours ahead of us. The patterns are chaotic, not like in-ship technology in our databases." Manor moved to look at the sensor readings. Through the neural link, felt her share his curiosity. Could be debris from an ancient battle, she guessed it. Species in the old days built very crude ships with unstable power system. Before the Alliance brought peace, many primitive species had fought wars with terrible weapons. They built ships that barely held together, powered by dangerous reactors that sometimes explode on their own. Archaeological teams sometimes found the wreckage of such vessels drifting into space. "It's closer," he ordered, "but keep our distance. If it's old wreckage with unstable power sources, I don't want to risk the crew." Harmony's Edge changed course with fluid grace. The ship's AI whispered gentle questions through the neural link, asking permission before making any major changes. This was how civilized ship worked, always asking, always careful, always thinking about the safety of everyone involved. They moved deeper into the unknown region, felt the peace of routine patrol work. His crew performed their duties with quiet efficiency. The ship's sensors reached out like gentle fingers, touching the darkness of space and reading its secrets. Power had been exploring space for over 2,000 years. They had met dozens of other species, fought wars with some, made peace with all. Every civilization they encountered eventually learned that cooperation was better than conflict. Trade was better than war. The Alliance proved that different species could work together for everyone's benefit. And S called again, his mental voice carrying more worry now. "The energy readings are getting stronger, and there are multiple sources, at least 20 separate objects showing power signatures." The objects was unusual for old wreckage. Most ancient battles left only a few broken ships drifting in space, but primitive species sometimes traveled in large groups, of finding 20 wrecks together was possible. "Signs of active technology?" asked. "What's strange, sir? The power readings suggest active reactors, but the energy patterns are so chaotic that our computers think the ship should be exploding. No civilized species would build reactors that run so close to overload." Mandara shared her thoughts through the neural link. Ancient emergency power systems sometimes ran very hot when they were failing. These could be automated ships with dying power cores. They did this. Emergency protocols required them to investigate any signs of ships in distress. Even if the ship belonged to unknown species, Alliance law demanded they offer assistance. "Speed and approach carefully," he ordered. "Charge our shield generators but keep weapons powered down. If there are survivors on the ships, I don't want them to think we're attacking." Crew worked with practice calm. Through the neural link, felt their shared confidence. They had done this kind of rescue mission many times before. The Alliance had protocols for everything, procedures designed to keep everyone safe while still helping those in need. The minutes passed, the sensor reading grew stronger and more confusing. The unknown ships, if they were ships, showed energy patterns unlike anything in Alliance databases. They seemed to be running multiple reactor systems in parallel, with backup systems layered on top of other backup systems. It was like someone had taken normal ship designs and added 3 times too many power sources. And her S said, his voice now carrying real alarm. "I'm reading weapon signatures, multiple active targeting systems. These ships are armed and powered for combat." A chill of surprise. Armed ships this far from any known civilization was not normal, but perhaps they were automated defense platforms left by some long-dead species. "Respond to our standard greeting signals," he asked. "Nothing, sir. No acknowledgement of our hails." "We proceed with first contact protocols," decided. "Ready the translation computers and prepare a peaceful approach. Whatever we're about to meet, we'll handle it the Alliance way." Harmony's Edge continued its careful approach toward whatever waited in the darkness ahead. Alarm started screaming 30 minutes later. Andor had never heard his ship make sounds like that before. The Harmony's Edge was built for quiet efficiency, its system designed to whisper warnings instead of shrieking them. But now every scanner, every sensor array, every detector system was howling like wounded animals. Port shied over the noise, but he could barely hear his own voice. The neural link, he felt his crew's panic and confusion mixing with his own thoughts. The ship's AI was having some kind of breakdown, flooding the network with error messages and warnings that made no sense. S called from his center station, his hands flying over controls that sparked and flickered. The computers are overloading trying to process the scan data. The energy readings they're impossible, sir. Commander worked frantically at her station, trying to bring some order to the chaos. All sensor arrays are functional, she reported, but they're detecting energy signatures that shouldn't exist. The computers think they're seeing ships with nuclear reactors running at 200% capacity. It would cause them to explode, she said. Yes, sir. That's why the computers are having breakdowns. They keep trying to warn us about imminent reactor explosions, but the readings stay stable. Forced himself to think clearly despite the screening alarms. Emergency shutdown of all automated warning system. Switch to manual sensor control only. Bridge fell into blessed silence as the alarms died, but the quiet felt wrong now, heavy with the knowledge that something terrible weighed ahead of them. The main screen space looked empty, just stars and darkness, but the sensors told a different story. 23 objects hung information ahead of them, each one radiating energy like a small sun. The computers couldn't identify the technology, but they could measure its power output. What they found broke every rule of safe engineering. Visual contact in 30 seconds, announced Navigator S. His mental voice through the neural link carried fear and excitement mixed together. The screen ordered. The main viewer shifted to long-range optical sensors. At first, there was nothing but empty space. Then the computer enhanced the image and saw them. But not like any ships he had ever seen before. Huge, some of them larger than Alliance battlecruisers, but they looked wrong, like someone had built them in a hurry using spare parts from different worlds. The hulls were patched, with obvious repair work covering what must have been terrible damage. Gun turrets stuck out at odd angles, some of them clearly added after the original construction. Antenna arrays and center clusters spread from every surface like metal weeds. The Ancestors, Whifford Subcommander, what species builds ships like that? Were arranged in what looked like a comet formation, not the careful, peaceful arrangements that Alliance ships use for patrols or exploration. This was the kind of formation that military historians showed in classes about the old wars, ships positioned to cover each other's weak points, ready to fight and die together. Again for left signs ordered. Multiple active reactor signatures on every ship, reported S. I'm reading life support systems, artificial gravity, active computer networks. These ships are definitely crewed, and sir, I'm detecting weapons. Lots of weapons. The formation on his screen. The unknown ships carried far more firepower than they should be able to handle. Their hulls showed signs of reinforcement, as if someone had kept adding armor and weapons until the ships could barely hold together under their own weight. They're built for war, he said quietly. Not exploration, not trade, war. This was disturbing. The galaxy had known peace for 3 centuries. The Alliance had contacted dozens of species during that time, and all of them had eventually learned that cooperation was better than conflict. But these ships looked like they expected to fight battles every day. Called communications officer. I'm detecting multiple transmission sources from the unknown fleet. They're broadcasting in at least 15 different languages simultaneously. In translations, computer is working on it, but the signals are aggressive. High-energy transmissions, very direct, not like the careful diplomatic communication we're used to. Chill run through him. Aggressive communication meant these strangers might not follow Alliance protocols for first contact. In civilized space, unknown ships always began with peaceful greetings and formal introduction, but these vessels seemed ready for immediate combat. As announced, I'm reading massive energy buildups on several of the unknown ships. It looks like they're charting weapon system. Shields up, ordered immediately, but keep our weapons powered down. We need to show peaceful intent. Army's Edge activated its defense systems. The ship's biometal hull shifted and hardened, while energy shields flickered to life around the vessel. But compared to the firepower readings from the unknown fleet, their defenses looked pathetically weak. Ender said, I'm getting clear translations now. The signals are identification challenges and targeting warnings. They're demanding to know who we are and what we're doing here. The channel ordered full diplomatic protocols. Channel open, sir. Host himself and spoke in the formal tone that Alliance officers learned at the Academy. Unknown vessels. This is commander of the Alliance ship Harmony's Edge. We detected energy signatures in the region and came to offer assistance if needed. We come in peace and wish to establish friendly contact according to standard Galactic protocol. Response came back immediately, and it shocked him. Alliance ship, this is Admiral commanding Human Defense Fleet 7. You have entered a combat zone. State your intentions and allegiance or be treated as hostile. Voice was hard, sharp, completely unlike the careful diplomatic language that civilized species used, and the words themselves were frightening. Combat zone, treated as hostile. These strangers spoke like they expected everyone they met to be enemies. Reply carefully, we are not familiar with your species or your conflict. The Alliance seeks only peaceful contact and mutual understanding. We have no hostile intentions toward any party. There was a long pause before the human admiral responded. When he did, his voice carried suspicion and impatience. And ship, you claim no knowledge of our situation. Are you saying you haven't detected the Devourer pursuit fleet? You have detected only your ships, Admiral. We are not aware of any other vessels in the region. Pause, then stand by for tactical briefing, but keep your distance and your weapons cold. My people have been fighting for 8 years straight and we don't trust easily anymore. His crew's confusion and fear through the neural link. Fighting for 8 years. That was impossible. No civilized war lasted more than a few months before diplomats found a peaceful solution. The screen, the human ships continued their aggressive formation, weapons powered and ready. These were not explorers or traders. They were warriors, pure and simple. Their ships were built to fight and keep fighting until they were completely destroyed. Subcommander said quietly, what kind of species builds their entire fleet for war? Stared at the weapon-heavy ships on his screen. The kind that expects to die fighting, he answered. The question is, what are they fighting that's so terrible they can't surrender or negotiate? The ships waited in their combat formation, ready for battle even during a diplomatic conversation. Whoever had shaped the species, it had taught them that peace was a luxury they couldn't afford. Something in the depths of space was still hunting them. Wolf's image appeared on the main screen an hour later, and Commander had to work hard not to show his shock. The leader looked like he had been fighting for decades. His face was covered with scars, and his left arm was clearly artificial, made of metal and plastic instead of flesh. His uniform was patched and faded, bearing marks that suggested it had seen combat many times. Most disturbing of all were his eyes, hard and cold, constantly moving as if he expected to attack at any moment. It was not what Alliance first contact protocols had prepared for. Every species the Alliance had ever met sent their best diplomats for initial meetings, polished representatives who spoke carefully and followed proper procedures. But the humans had sent a warrior who looked like he trusted no one. Admiral said without any formal greeting. You claim your alliance has no knowledge of our situation. That means you've been very lucky or very isolated. I'm going to give you information that might save your people's lives. To follow diplomatic protocols despite the Admiral's blunt approach. We appreciate any information you can share, Admiral. The Alliance always seeks to understand new situations and help where possible. Admiral made a sound that might have been bitter laughter. Help. Yes, you want to help. The question is whether your people can learn to help the way this war requires. The screen behind the Admiral could see part of the human ship bridge. It was nothing like the peaceful organic curves of Alliance vessels. Everything looked hard and functional, built for efficiency instead of comfort. Crew members moved with quick, nervous energy, constantly checking displays and web systems. Even during this diplomatic conversation, they were ready for immediate combat. Admiral said, you meant in a war that has lasted 8 years. In Alliance space, conflicts are typically resolved through negotiation within weeks or months. Perhaps we could help mediate a peaceful solution. Admiral stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned to someone off screen and said something in what's translator identified as human military language. The response made the Admiral shake his head grimly. I'm going to show you something. My intelligence officer has prepared a tactical summary of our situation. Watch carefully, because your people's survival might depend on understanding this. Green split to show Admiral on one side and a tactical display on the other. The display showed a map of local space, with dozens of star systems marked in different colors. As watched, many of the systems changed from blue to red. Years ago, Admiral began, humanity's deep space colonies started going dark, not destroyed in battle, not conquered in the usual sense. They simply stopped existing. No distress calls, no evacuation attempts. One day they were there, the next day there was nothing but empty space. Tactical display showed the pattern of disappearing colonies, spreading like a disease across human space. System after system turning red as entire worlds vanished without trace. First we thought it was some kind of natural disaster, the Admiral continued. Solar flares, maybe, or some unknown cosmic phenomenon, but then our deep scout ship started sending back reports of what they found in the dead system. Images appeared on the screen, felt his crew's horror through the neural link as they saw what remained of human worlds, planets stripped down to bare rock, base stations reduced to drifting scrap metal. Everything that had once supported life was gone, consumed down to the atomic level. Call them devourers, Admiral said. We don't know where they came from or what they really are. We only know what they do. They eat everything. Plants, ships, people, technology. They consume entire worlds and use the resources to build more of themselves. They stared at the images of dead worlds. Surely there must be some way to communicate with them, to find out what they want. Admiral's expression grew even harder. Commander, we tried everything. Diplomatic signals in every language we knew. Offers of trade, territorial resources, cultural exchanges, scientific data, artistic works. We sent them everything that has ever convinced one species to make peace with another. And their response? Our diplomats, ships, crews, messages, and all. They don't want to talk, Commander. They want to consume, and they're very good at it. Tactical display showed the current situation. Human forces were falling back toward Alliance space in a fighting retreat that had lasted for years. Every battle was a delaying action, buying time for civilian evacuations while looting ships and personnel at an alarming rate. Why our ships look like this, Admiral explained, gesturing to his battle-scarred bridge. We don't build for exploration anymore. We don't build for comfort or diplomacy or peaceful trade. We build to fight something that wants to eat us all. Every weapon, every arm plate, every battle system exists because we learned that anything less than maximum firepower means extinction. Commander spoke through the neural link, asking about casualties. How many people have they lost? Laid the question, and Admiral was quiet for a long moment before answering. 3 billion people, Commander. 43 billion dead, and that's just what we can confirm. Entire colony worlds with populations we'll never know about. Extended family networks, research stations, deep space habitats, all of them gone. The number was so large its mind struggled to understand it. The entire species numbered only 12 billion individuals. These humans had lost the equivalent of 3 entire civilizations. Do you continue fighting after laws like that? He asked. The alternative is extinction, Admiral replied simply. Commander, your alliance sounds like a wonderful thing. Peace, cooperation, diplomatic solutions to conflicts. We had something similar once. Trade agreements, cultural exchanges, mutual defense pacts. It all worked fine until we met something that didn't want to negotiate. Admiral leaned forward, his artificial arm whirring softly as it moved. The Devourers are 2 months behind us, maybe less. Our fleet is falling back because we can't win a straight fight. We need time to regroup, to resupply, to find some advantage that might let us hurt them. You're retreating into alliance space, realized. Yes, whether we wanted to or not, we're bringing this war to your doorstep. The question is what your people are going to do about it. The tactical display, red markers showed the advancing Devourer fleet. It was massive, hundreds of ships moving in perfect coordination, consuming everything in their path. They would reach Alliance territory within weeks. Admiral said carefully, the Alliance has protocols for dealing with aggressive species. Perhaps if we presented a united front, showed them the strength of our combined civilization. Admiral cut him off with a sharp gesture. Commander, look at your ship, then look at mine. Your vessel is beautiful, elegant, built by people who expect to live in peace. My ships are ugly, crude, built by people who expect to die fighting. That tells you everything you need to know about our different situations. Around his bridge, seeing it through human eyes. The organic curves, the soft lighting, the crew linked by impact networks that prevented violence. It was built for a galaxy where wars ended in negotiations and enemies became friends. Devourers are coming, Admiral said. When they arrive, your people will have to choose. Learn to fight like us, or watch your civilization get consumed world by world. There is no third option. The screen went dark, leaving staring at his own reflection in the black surface. Around him, his crew struggled with the implications of what they had learned. Galaxy was no longer the safe place they had thought it was. The ship that Admiral invited them aboard looked like it had been through hell. Ran a small diplomatic team transferred to the human dreadnought Indomitable using a shuttle. As they approached the massive vessel, the damage became more apparent. The hull was covered with patches, welds, and obvious battle scars. Some seconds looked like they had been completely rebuilt using different materials. Gun turrets had been added wherever there was space, giving the ship a bristling, dangerous appearance. Look at the engine signatures, Sub-Commander whispered through the neural link. They're running 3 different reactor types in parallel. That should be impossible. The energy readings on his personal scanner. The human ship was indeed running multiple power systems that weren't designed to work together. It was like they had taken parts from different vessels and forced them to function as one unit. It's not elegant, he admitted, but it works. The bay they landed in was a harsh contrast to Alliance design philosophy. Everything was metal and hard angles, built for function instead of beauty. Human crew members moved with quick efficiency, checking weapons and equipment even during what should have been a peaceful diplomatic visit. They all looked tired, noticed, not just physically exhausted, but mentally worn down by years of constant warfare. Admiral met them personally, flanked by several officers who kept their hands near their weapons. Welcome aboard the Indomitable, Commander. I apologize for the accommodations, but this ship wasn't built for diplomatic visits. Walked through the quarters, saw more evidence of the human desperate situation. Damage control teams worked around the clock, repairing systems that should have been replaced years ago. Supply rooms were nearly empty. Crew quarters were overcrowded, with multiple people sharing spaces designed for one. How long has your ship been in continuous combat? Asked. This vessel has been in active service for 6 years without returning to a major base, Admiral replied. We lost our shipyards early in the war. Everything we have now was built in converted asteroid mines or captured from the Devourers. He entered a briefing room that doubled as the Admiral's office. The walls were covered with tactical displays showing fleet positions, supply status, and casualty reports. The numbers were staggering: ships lost, crew dead, entire systems evacuated. Admiral said, I want to show you something that your people need to understand. Activated a recording device, and the room filled with the sound of battle communication. Human voices shouted orders, reported damage, called for help, but what struck was the calm way they discussed their own deaths. Destroyer Defiance requesting immediate support. We've lost main power and weapons. Hull breach on decks 4 through 7. Defiance, this is Admiral Martinez. Can you withdraw? Negative, sir. Engines are gone, but we can still ram that Devourer cruiser if you give us a clear approach. Understood, Defiance. All ships clear a quarter for ramming attack. Thank you, sir. It's been an honor, Defiance out. Recording showed the final moments of the human destroyer as it accelerated toward a much larger enemy vessel. The ship exploded on impact, taking the Devourer with it. 130 human lives traded for one enemy vessel. It was the Battle of Station, Admiral explained. We lost 14 ships that day, but we stopped the Devourer fleet from reaching 3 colony worlds. Captain Martinez saved 2 million civilians by ordering her ship to ram the enemy. Sick, your people sacrificed themselves in battle. Necessary, yes? Commander, let me ask you something. If an enemy was coming to eat you to consume every person you ever loved, what would you do to stop them? You would negotiate, find a peaceful solution. If they refused to negotiate, if they only wanted to devour everything you cared about. But with the concept, there's always a peaceful solution. Every conflict can be resolved through diplomacy if both sides want to avoid casualties. We'll activate another recording. This one showed attempts at diplomatic contact with the Devourers. Human ships broadcasting in hundreds of languages, offering trade agreements, territory, anything that might stop the advance. The response was always the same. The Devourer ships ignored all communications and continued their attack. We tried everything, Commander. We offered them empty worlds to consume, raw materials, even abandoned ships and equipment. They ignored every offer and kept coming for our population centers. Admiral walked to a wall display showing the current strategic situation. Do you know what we learned about the Devourers after 8 years of fighting them? They don't want territory. They don't want resources. They want us. Living beings, thinking minds, complex civilization. Those are what they consume first. Did matter is just raw material to them. They're at the tactical display. You're saying they prefer to eat intelligent life. Saying they need it. Our science teams think the Devourers feed on some kind of psychic energy that only comes from living minds. The more complex the civilization, the better they like it. That's why they always target population centers first. This was the most horrifying thing I'd heard yet. A species that hunted intelligence itself, that viewed civilization as food. Show him the casual protocols, suggested one of Admiral's officers, a woman with general's rank insignia. Admiral hesitated. General Martinez, those protocols might be too much for Alliance sensibilities. If they're going to survive what's coming, they need to understand what survival costs. Admiral activated another display. This one showed human military protocols for fighting the Devourers, read in growing horror as he learned about human tactics. Were equipped with self-destruct charges to prevent capture. Crews were trained to continue fighting even after lethal radiation exposure. Officers were required to execute their own people to prevent them from being taken alive by the enemy. Entire colonies practiced mass suicide rather than face consumption by the Devourers. This is madness, whispered. No, Admiral said quietly. This is what happens when you face an enemy that wants to eat you alive. We learned that being captured by the Devourers is worse than death. Much worse. The few survivors we've rescued from Devourer ships, they beg us to kill them rather than let them be taken again. Martinez spoke for the first time. Commander, my brother was captured during the fall of New Geneva. We found him 3 months later on a Devourer battleship. He was still alive but barely human anymore. They had been feeding on his mind while keeping his body alive. He begged me to end his suffering. Did you ask, though he dreaded the answer? Yes. I put a bullet through his brain because I loved him too much to let him suffer anymore. That's what the war has taught us, Commander. Sometimes mercy means pulling the trigger. His crew's shock and revulsion through the Neuralink. There was everything the Alliance stood against: violence, death, the deliberate ending of life. But as he looked at the humans around him, he didn't see monsters. He saw people who had been forced to make impossible choices. People have been fighting alone for 8 years, he said finally. Yes. And now the war is coming to Alliance space. The question is whether your people can learn to fight like us, or whether you'll try to negotiate with something that wants to consume your mind. We'll walk to the viewport and stared out at his battered fleet. Commander, I've been fighting the war since it started. I've lost friends, family, entire worlds full of people I swore to protect. But I keep fighting because the alternative is extinction. Your Alliance is about to learn the same lesson. The human fleet waited in combat formation, ready to fight and die for their species' survival. They had abandoned every principle of civilized warfare because civilization itself was at stake. The Devourers would arrive, and the Alliance would face the same choice humanity had faced 8 years ago: learn to fight like monsters or be consumed by them. Devourers arrived like plague of metal locusts. Ender was back aboard the Harmon's Edge when the long-range sensors began screaming warnings. Through the Neuralink, he felt his crew's terror as they processed what their instruments were showing them. Ender called from his center station, massive energy signatures drawing out of hyperspace. Multiple contacts at least. Sir, I count over 300 vessels. The main screen, space itself seemed to darken as the Devourer fleet emerged from jump. Their ships were sleek and organic, like they had been grown rather than built. They moved with perfect coordination, flowing in attack formation without any visible communication between vessels. Admiral was right, Subcommander whispered through the Neuralink. They're beautiful and terrible. The end information. Unlike the crude patch appearance of the human fleet, the Devourer ships looked flawless. Their hulls curved and twisted like living things, covered in what looked like scales or chitin. They radiated power, but it was controlled power, elegant and efficient. Our communications officer reported, "I'm receiving a broadcast from Admiral. The human fleet is moving to intercept." "Put him through." Admiral's voice came over the communication system, calm despite the approaching disaster. "All Alliance vessels, this is Admiral. The Devourers are here. If you want to survive, follow our lead and do exactly what we do. Do not try to negotiate. Do not try to surrender. Fight or die." As the human fleet moved into action, their ships accelerated toward the enemy with reckless speed, weapons charting and targeting systems lying on. It was like watching someone run toward certain death. "We assist them?" Sub-Commander asked. "Alliance protocols say we should attempt diplomatic contact first," replied, but even as he said it, he remembered Admiral's warnings. "So, announce, I'm transmitting standard first contact greetings to the Devourer fleet." Response came immediately, but not through communication channels. Instead, 3 Devourer ships broke from the main formation and accelerated directly toward the Harmon's edge. Their approach was smooth and purposeful, like predators closing in on prey. "They're not responding to our messages," said, his mental voice carrying panic through the neural link, "but they're definitely coming for us." Base of action ordered, charge shields and defensive system. Harmony's edge was fast and maneuverable, built for exploration and patrol work. It easily avoided the first Devourer hack run, but as the alien ship passed by, got his first close look at them through the main viewer. The Devourer vessels were alive. He had thought was metal hull plating was actually some kind of biological armor. The ship breathed, their sides rising and falling in a steady rhythm. Center ports that looked like eyes tracked the movement of the Alliance ship. Most disturbing of all, the hulls were covered with obvious scars and heel wounds, battle damage that had grown back instead of being repaired. As called out, these aren't ships in the traditional sense. The computer thinks they're actually living creatures, possibly genetically engineered or artificially evolved. Explained their perfect coordination. The Devourer fleet wasn't made up of individual vessels with separate crews. It was a single organism with multiple bodies, all controlled by one collective mind. "Commander," Sub-Commander shouted, human ship approaching at high speed. The destroyer was racing toward their position, engines overloaded and weapons blazing. It was being chased by 5 Devourer bioships, all of them firing some kind of energy weapon that ate through the destroyer's armor like acid. "Vessel, this is Commander. We can provide assistance. Please transmit your damage status." Response came through bursts of static. "Alliance ship, this is Captain on the destroyer Vengeance. Don't try to help. These things learn from every ship they capture. If they get you, they'll know everything about Alliance technology." The destroyer suddenly changed course, turning directly toward the largest Devourer ship. Its engine glowed white-hot as the captain pushed them beyond safe limits. "Vengeance, what are you doing?" called. "We always do," Captain replied, making them pay for every ship they take. The destroyer rammed into the Devourer bioship at full speed. The explosion lit up space like a new star, destroying both vessels instantly, but the other 4 Devourer ships continued their advance, apparently unconcerned about the loss of their command. They don't value individual lives, realized, just like Admiral said. The Neuralink, he felt his crew's horror as they watched the larger battle develop. Human ships were fighting with desperate courage, but they were outnumbered and, every few minutes, another human vessel would ram an enemy ship or self-destruct rather than be captured. As reported, I'm reading something strange from the destroyed ships. The wreckage from both human and Devourer vessels is being absorbed by the remaining bioships. The screen watched in fascination and disgust as the Devourer ship extended tendrils toward the floating debris. The wreckage was pulled into openings that appeared in the bioships' hulls, like mouths swallowing food. "Reading the wreckage," he said, "metal, electronics, everything." Worse than that, he realized the bioships were also collecting pieces of human bodies from the destroyed vessel. The Devourers were literally consuming their enemies, using the raw materials to repair damage and grow large. "Alliance ship," Admiral's voice came over the communication system. "You need to withdraw now. This isn't your kind of fight." "We can help," insisted. "Alliance protocols require us to assist ships in distress." "Or look around you. Half my fleet is already gone, and we've only destroyed a dozen of their ships. This is what happens when you fit something that gets stronger by eating your dead." Look at the tactical display. Admiral was right. The human fleet was being systematically destroyed, and the Devourer ships were growing visibly larger as they consumed the wreckage. What had started as a battle was turning into a feeding frenzy. Sub-Commander said urgently, "We have 6 Devourer ships approaching our position. I don't think they're going to ignore us anymore." The ships moved with predatory grace, surrounding the Harmony's edge pack hunters. Their hulls pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that might have been beautiful under other circumstances. Its vessel came a voice unlike anything in the galactic databases. It spoke without technology, the words somehow transmitted directly into their minds. "You will be consumed, your thoughts will feed us, your ship will become part of us. Resistance is futile." "It's your diplomatic contact," Admiral said grimly over the communications channel. "They don't want to talk, Commander, they want to eat you." First Devourer ship fired a weapon that looked like living lightning. It struck the Harmony's edge shields and immediately began spreading across the energy barrier like a virus, eating away at the protective field. "Shields down to 60%, Sub-Commander reported. Whatever they're using, it's designed to consume energy." "Return fire," ordered. Alliance ship weapons were smart missiles that chose their own targets and paths to minimize collateral damage. They struck the nearest Devourer ship and exploded harmlessly against its bioarmor. The creature barely seemed to notice. "Our weapons aren't designed for this," realized. "They're built to disable, not destroy." He watched a human cruiser explode under concentrated Devourer fire. But even as it died, the ship's final act was to launch a spread of nuclear missiles at point-blank range. The Devourer ship that had killed it was vaporized in the atomic fire. "That's how you fight them," Admiral's voice said. "No mercy, no restraint, no civilized rules. You kill them or they eat you. There is nothing else." Harmony's edge was dying. Or watched helplessly as another Devourer bioship clamped onto his vessel's hull with organic tendrils. The living cables pulsed as they began draining power directly from the ship's system. Through the neural link, he felt his crew's panic and pain as the ship itself screamed in agony. "Breach on deck 7, Sub-Commander reported, her mental voice strained. "The bioship is trying to force an entry. It's eating through our armor." The main screen could see the Devourer creature's feeding apparatus extending toward their hull. It looked like a massive organic drill, spinning and secreting acid that dissolved the biometal armor like sugar in rain. "Emergency bulkheads," he ordered. "Seal off the affected section." The ship's AI is having some kind of breakdown. It can't handle the direct neural contact with the Devourer. Every time the thing touches us, our computer systems start failing. This was the nightmare Admiral had tried to warn him about. The Alliance had built their ships for civilized warfare, with smart systems that thought before firing and impact networks that prevented friendly casualties. But the Devourers turned those advantages into weaknesses. What status, he asked. Systems are refusing to fire, reported Weddon's officer Ross. The smart weapons detect Alliance life signs aboard the Devourer ship and won't engage. They think they might hit prisoners. There are no prisoners, Sid grimly. Override the safe protocols. Can't, sir. The AI won't allow it. The Neuralink felt the ship's artificial intelligence struggling with concepts it couldn't understand. The AI had been designed to preserve life, to minimize casualties, to find peaceful solutions. But the Devourers were using those very principles against them. The tactical display, he watched the remains of the human fleet continuing their desperate battle. Admiral's flagship was surrounded by Bioships, its hull cracked open like an egg. But even as it died, the human vessel was launching escape pods filled with nuclear warheads instead of crew members. And ship, Admiral's voice came through the stack-filled communication channel. You need to abandon that vessel now. The Devourer is going to consume your crew, and when it does, it will learn everything about Alliance technology. Can still fight, insisted, even as another section of his ship's hull was eaten away. And look at your weapons. Look at your defenses. Everything you have is designed to avoid casualties and minimize destruction. The Devourers are using your own mercy against you. It's true. The Alliance had spent 3 centuries building weapons that chose not to kill, ships that healed instead of harmed, crews that felt each other's pain through impact links. All of it was useless against an enemy that wanted to consume them alive. As called from his center station, the bioship has breached the inner hull. I'm reading Devourer organisms inside our ship. Internal monitors saw them. The Devourers weren't wearing spacesuits or using technology to board his ship. They were creatures that could survive in vacuum, moving through the corridors like living nightmares. They walked upright like humanoids, but their bodies were covered in the same organic armor as their ships. Where their faces should have been, there were only feeding orifices surrounded by sensory tendrils. Security teams to Deck 7, he ordered. Bond came through the Neuralink, confusion and fear from his security personnel. Alliance ships carried no lethal weapons for internal use. Their security teams were trained to subdue and restrain, not kill. They had stunners and restraint fields, tools designed to stop criminals and protesters, not alien monsters. Commander, Subcommander said urgently, the security teams are asking for lethal force authorization. The stunners aren't affecting the Devourer organisms. Rise said, but even as he spoke, he knew it was too late. The ship's internal sensors, he watched his security teams try to stop the Devourers. The Alliance officers fired their stunners, tried to use restraint fields, attempted to negotiate even as the creatures advanced on them. Nothing worked. The Devourers simply walked through the non-lethal defenses and began feeding. Screams that came through the Neuralink were unlike anything had ever experienced. The Devourers weren't just killing his crew, they were consuming them while they were still alive, draining their minds and memories. Through the impact network, every crew member felt their companion's agony as they were eaten from the inside out. Hands abandoned ship, ordered. This is not a drill, get to the escape pods now. And the escape pods were designed according to Alliance principle. They carried emergency beacons to help rescuers find survivors. Those same beacons would lead the Devourers straight to any crew members who escaped. Communications officer said, his mental voice weak with pain. Admiral is requesting permission to target our ship with nuclear weapons. What? Says it's the only way to stop the Devourers from learning about our technology. If they consume our computer systems, they'll know everything about Alliance ship design, weapons, defenses, even the location of our homeworlds. But at the tactical display, the human Admiral was right. If the Devourers captured the Harmony's Edge intact, they would gain access to 3 centuries of Alliance technological advancement. They would learn the location of every Alliance world, the capabilities of every Alliance ship, the weaknesses of every Alliance defense. How long until impact, he asked. He said, sir, Admiral is giving us time to evaluate. The Neuralink felt his crew's terror and despair. They had trained for many emergencies, but never for this. Never for the choice between death and being consumed alive by alien monsters. Hands to escape pods, he ordered. Emergency evacuation protocol. His crew raced for the escape pods, watched the Devourers spread through his ship like an infection. They moved with purpose, heading straight for the computer core and the navigating databases. They knew exactly what they were looking for. Admiral's voice came over the communication system. You need to get off that ship now. My missiles are already in flight. What about the wounded? Asked. Through the Neuralink, he could feel crew members who were trapped, injured, unable to reach the escape pods. They're already dead, Admiral said bluntly. The Devourers don't take prisoners. Leave them and save who you can. It was the hardest order had ever given. Alliance protocols required him to rescue every crew member, to never abandon anyone who could be saved. But the humans had learned a harder lesson, sometimes saving a few men sacrificing others. They will crew to escape pods. Emergency launch in 30 seconds. The escape pod's launch took one last look at his ship. The Harmony's Edge had been beautiful once, elegant and peaceful. Now it was being consumed by living nightmares, its biometal hull writhing as the Devourers fed on it. Their missiles struck just as his escape pod cleared the blast radius. The explosion vaporized his ship, the Devourer bioship, and everything aboard both vessels. It was brutal, final, and absolutely necessary. The silence that followed finally understood what Admiral had been trying to tell him. In a war against something that wanted to consume you alive, mercy was a luxury that could mean extinction. The Alliance would have to learn to fight like humans, or watch their civilization be devoured world by world. The question was whether they could abandon their principles in time to save their people. Days after the battle, Commander sat in the cramped cabin of a human refugee transport and tried to write his report. He explained to the Alliance Council what he had witnessed. How could he make them understand that everything they believed about civilized warfare was about to become obsolete? The words seemed inadequate, too small to carry the weight of what he had learned. The small porthole, he had seen the remains of Admiral's fleet. Of the 23 human warships that had faced the Devourers, only 6 had survived. The Indomitable was among them, but it looked like a derelict. Half its hull was gone, replaced by crude patches welded on by disparate ripped crews. Alliance ship Harmony's Edge was nothing but radioactive dust, destroyed by human nuclear weapons to prevent its capture. 43 of his crew members had died in the battle. 27 others were recovering from injuries in the human metal bay, being treated with equipment that was functional but harsh, designed for battlefield conditions rather than comfort. Will entered the cabin without knocking, moving with the weary efficiency of a man who had commanded too many losing battles. His artificial arm sparked occasionally, damaged in the fighting but still functioning. Like everything else in the human fleet, it was patched, repaired, and pressed into service despite its wounds. Commander, the Admiral said, sitting on the room's only chair. I've been monitoring your communications with Alliance Command. They're asking a lot of questions about our tactical methods. Disturbed by what they've seen, admitted. The Rang attacks, the self-destructs, the nuclear strikes against targets that might have contained prisoners. It goes against everything the Alliance stands for. What does the Alliance stand for exactly? Carefully before answering. Peace, cooperation, the belief that every conflict can be resolved through negotiation if both sides act in good faith. Will was quiet for a moment, staring out the porthole at his damaged fleet. That's a beautiful ideal, Commander. We had something similar once. The Human Colonial Compact had strict rules about warfare. No targeting of civilian population. No weapons of mass destruction. No torture or execution of prisoners. We spent 2 centuries building those principles into our military doctrine. What changed? It's something that didn't share our values. The first Devourer attack came at the colony world of New Shanghai. We tried to negotiate, sent diplomatic missions, offered territorial concessions. While we were talking, they consumed 4 billion people. Admiral activated his personal datapad, showing images from the aftermath of Devourer attacks. Worlds stripped bare of life, their populations consumed down to the last child. Cities that had been beautiful melted down for raw materials. Art, culture, history, all of it digested by creatures that saw intelligent life as nothing more than food. New Shanghai, we tried everything your alliance would suggest. Economic incentives, cultural exchanges, mutual defense treaties with other species. The Devourers ate them all. Every species that tried to negotiate with them simply vanished from the galaxy. The images of dead worlds, so you learned to fight like them. No, Commander, we learned to fight like something worse than them. The Devourers kill because it's their nature. We learned to kill because we had no choice. There's a difference. The ship's communication system could hear the sounds of the human survivors going about their duties. Engineering teams working around the clock to repair damage that should have sent their ships to scrapyards. Medical teams treating wounds that would have meant months of recovery in Alliance hospitals. Command crews planning their next retreat while calculating casualty ratios that would horrify any civilized military. The government wants to know if your people would be willing to teach Alliance forces your combat methods, said. We looked at him with something that might have been pity. Commander, you don't understand what you're asking. We didn't just change our tactics, we changed ourselves. Every human in this fleet has done things that would be considered war crime by your Alliance standards. Such as the destruction of civilian evacuation ships to prevent the Devourers from capturing them. I've executed my own officers to stop them from revealing military secrets under Devourer mind drain. I've used nuclear weapons in populated areas to deny resources to the enemy. Admiral's voice was flat, motionless. Every person under my command has blood on their hands. Not any blood, innocent blood. Because sometimes innocent people die to save everyone else. Sick, the Alliance could never accept those methods. The Alliance will die, Admiral said simply. Commander, I'm going to tell you something that might help you understand our situation. Do you know how many human civilians we've evacuated during this war? No. Every time we tried to evacuate civilians, the Devourers used them as bait. They would partially consume the refugees, leave them alive but changed, and use them to lure our rescue ships in traps. We lost 12 fleet elements that way before we learned to stop trying to save people. Implications hit like a physical blow. You abandon your own people. Hard choices. Sometimes we evacuate military personnel and let civilians die because soldiers can fight another day. Sometimes we do the opposite. The decision always comes down to one question. What gives humanity the best chance of survival? We'll activate another display, the one showing the strategic situation across human space. Red zones marked areas controlled by the Devourers. Blue zones showed human-held territory. The red areas covered 9% of what had once been human civilization. This is what 8 years of fighting looks like, Commander. We've lost almost everything. Our shipyards, our research stations, our industrial base, our population center. What you see here is all that's left of a species that once controlled 300 star system. But you're still fighting. The alternative is extinction. Commander, your alliance is going to face the same choice we did. You can maintain your civilized principles and watch your species get consumed, or you can learn to fight like us and maybe survive. The tactical display showing Alliance space. Peaceful worlds where billions of people live comfortable lives, protected by the belief that civilization had moved beyond the need for total warfare. They had no idea what was coming for them. How long do we have? He asked. The main Devourer fleet is 2 weeks behind us, maybe less. When they arrive in Alliance space, they'll head straight for your most populated worlds. That's where the feeding is best. And if the Alliance refuses to adopt your methods. Admiral was quiet for a long moment. Then we'll do what we've always done. Fight until we die and try to take as many of them with us as possible. Maybe we can slow them down enough for someone else to find a solution. Lies the terrible position his people were in. They could abandon their principles and learn to fight like humans, becoming something they had never wanted to be. Or they could maintain their values and face extinction when the Devourers arrived. The third option, Admiral said quietly, as if reading his thoughts. Your people could run, evacuate your core worlds, abandon the region of space entirely, find somewhere else to build your civilization. If our home worlds, our history, our culture, then having them consumed. Commander, we humans made our choice 8 years ago. We decided to fight and die rather than run. Maybe that was the wrong choice. Maybe we should have just packed up and left when we had the chance. Then walked to the porthole, looking out at the stars that had once seemed safe and peaceful. Somewhere among those stars, the Devourers were coming, and the Alliance had perhaps 2 weeks to decide what kind of people they wanted to be when the monsters arrived. Age of civilized warfare was ending. The only question was whether the Alliance would learn to survive in the darker age that was beginning, or whether they would die as the people they had always tried to be.